This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Hi, my name is Igor Kheifets, and this is the List Building Lifestyle, the only podcast which delivers cutting-edge conversion strategies from the online trenches straight to your earbuds. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. I also invite you to grab a free copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. And now, once again, it's time to claim your list building lifestyle. Welcome back to another edition of the List Building Lifestyle with your host, Igor Kheifets. Sometime back, my wife and I were strolling down Times Square. It's the first time we've ever been to New York, and it's the first time we've ever been to Times Square, and the energy was amazing. And there were so many people around us that it was really hard to focus. And so whenever we were going anywhere, and in this case, we were going to get some breakfast in what's called a Stardust Diner, where the waitresses are actually Broadway singers or aspiring Broadway actresses, and they sing as you eat live. You know, we were like really in a hurry because we're really, really hungry. And so if you've ever been to Times Square, you know that there's a bunch of people out there that try to hand you flyers and try to get you to come into different restaurants and comedy shows. And so there was this one gentleman, which, he just started yelling at us, if you will. It's like, hey, you, here, go to a comedy show. He was like just basically making claims, right? He was trying to get us in through giving us this product, and he was offering some bonus for free or whatever. And, that's how most of them do it. That's how most of these guys and girls are actually trying to get you in. And, after just literally 20 minutes of walking down the street, you end up getting sort of like used to it, and you stop paying attention. You literally do not pay any attention to what they're saying. Now, this one time when we were going to the Stardust Diner, it was different. It was really different because when we were going there, as I was strolling down the street, I paid attention where all these guys are located. And there was this one guy who was standing right next to the crosswalk, and we were passing him, right? And when he saw us, he did something really different. He said, "Hey, you white guy, are you allergic to black people?" Now, I almost stopped to say no, but then I realized what just happened. What happened is he engaged my brain with a different question, right? He engaged my brain with a question so absurd, right? I mean, how can you be allergic to a race, right? You can't, I mean, it's just silly, but what it did, it was so different, and it engaged my brain to a point where I almost stopped. Now, I'll be honest, if I did not know marketing, if I did not understand human psychology as a result of, literally almost a decade in the marketing space, I would probably stop and have an argument with him about how dare he say something like that to me, or, no, I'm not allergic to black people. What the hell are you talking about? But I didn't, and I moved on. And, later on, I discussed it with my wife, and she said that she answered the question in her mind. Right? Now, what this tells us, this is really just a great marketing lesson for all of us because, first off, the brain cannot ignore a question. And that is the concept I first learned by observing Frank Kern and studying his mass control program back in the day. He was giving a presentation, the mass control event, and he was, constantly using questions to re-engage the audience. And so that was when I first learned that rather than trying to make more claims or rather than try to like brand myself or seem the most professional person in the marketplace or whatever, I could easily get my prospects' attention, even in the busiest environment, using questions. And as a result, I shifted my email strategy and I started incorporating questions into not just my subject lines, but also the emails themselves. So I would often use a question in the subject line, especially a question that I know my prospect is wondering right now. A question that my prospect is thinking about that is not being answered by anybody else. For instance, last night I emailed my list with the subject line, how can I prevent failure in my first solo ad? Because I know a lot of people are afraid to buy their first solo ad because they're afraid to fail, right? And so I just asked the question. Now, this particular subject line has performed at 25% higher, open rate than other subject lines that preceded it, which tells you that questions are really powerful. Now, that's one way I use questions. The other way I use questions is by using questions within the body of the email. So I would sell an idea, and it's a concept we discussed in one of the previous episodes and why it's important to do. And then I would ask a question that would get me to continue the email and take the email into the direction I wanted to take. For instance, I could start an email by saying, did you know you could use questions in order to engage your audience in a way where they cannot resist you? And then I could ask the question. I could say, why? Why do questions work so well? Well, because blah, 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 right? And I could literally build an email around that simply because I engaged their brain with a question, and people cannot ignore questions. They're just wired in a way where if question is being asked, it has to be answered. Call it curiosity, call it anything you want, but it does work. And therefore, you have to use questions in your marketing, especially if right now you're at a stage in your business where you really have nothing else to say. If you're really just starting out, right, you should definitely be using lots and lots of questions, because that is one of the best ways to get your prospects' attention in a really busy inbox. Because let's face it, the inbox is pretty darn busy. In the last couple of years, the open rates, the average open rates went way down, and the click-through rates went way down simply because the competition is so great everywhere. Now we're not just fighting for their attention in their email, but we're also fighting for their attention on their Facebook feed. We're fighting for their attention on Instagram and on all these other services, text messages. I mean, you name it. There's so many communication channels that you have to be good at marketing, not at media, right? You have to be good at marketing. And one of the best ways to get people's attention is to ask questions. Now, it's really important, though, to ask really good questions instead of the kind of questions I see on my Facebook feed all the time. Just the other day, I was browsing my feed and I saw this classic, would you like to know how to make $1,000 before lunch? Comment yes, and I will send you the details. That kind of silly stuff, that won't work. That is just ridiculous. That will never work. Unless, of course, you never do it and you have a huge following on Facebook of highly engaged people. Then you can do it once. Okay, then you can do it one time, and that's pretty much the last time it's going to work. But if you are to truly master the art and science of asking questions, you now have to learn to think like your prospect, and you almost want to mirror the exact same questions that your prospects might be thinking about as we speak. In other words, rather than trying to come up with weird questions like, are you allergic to black people, and kind of throw people off their game, which again, it's in a way a pattern interrupt, and it's awesome, right? But it only worked for that guy particularly because he's black, right? And I'm white. So, I mean, he can't use it with another black guy. But in the marketing, when you're marketing business opportunities, what you want to do is you want to ask questions that mirror the prospect's present or future problems and state of affairs. In other words, if you know that your prospect works a good job, but he really kind of just hates it and he doesn't like his boss, then you could ask a question, for how much longer do you think you can stand this asshole? You could ask something like that. I mean, you don't have to use the word asshole, but the point is, you ask a question that the prospect literally asks themselves every single day. Something that really bothers them, something really like they can't really figure out for themselves. And by doing so, by mirroring this inner conflict or inner desire, if you will, and inner curiosity, you will then end up getting their attention no matter how busy the inbox is, as long as you hit the right question. That's why I said the quality of the prospects you'll get with the strategy will depend directly on the quality of the questions you ask, which is why it's always so critical for you to know exactly who your ideal target market is. I'll give another example. I was speaking to a VIP client yesterday because it was a VIP call day. And this gentleman, he's a younger gentleman. He's 23 or 22. And he went to school, he got a degree, and then he went into the oil and gas business. And he lives on the island of Brunei, which is a wealthy country. And so he said that virtually everybody in his state or on the island, they work in this industry and they make pretty good money, about $50,000 a year, which, let's face it, not bad for most people. But at the same time, he decided to get into the business opportunity space and become an entrepreneur. And now, then I went ahead and I assumed, okay, which I shouldn't, of course. I assumed, oh, right, so you probably hate your boss then. And he said, well, no, I think my boss is a stand-up guy. I really like my boss. It's just I want to prove to my society, to my surroundings, that you could have a great job and you can have a side business as well in your part-time, and you can still do well for yourself and not stress out, etc., and travel more and blah, blah, blah. So what happened is I failed to identify why this gentleman went in business, but that's a lesson because now I know I could actually, use this as a question in order to target specifically guys like him that work a good job, like their boss, but they want to travel more and they want something different in life. They want something bigger, something more meaningful, something more exciting, right? And so I could now ask a question. Do you like your job, but it's not exciting enough for you? And this question would lead into an email that could perhaps, invite them to join the business opportunity simply because that is probably a segment of the market on my list. Because if there's one person like that, there's other people like that for sure. So that sums up another edition of the List Building Lifestyle. Remember, ask better questions to get better prospects in a really busy marketplace. This is Igor Kheifets. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time we chat, have a good one. Thank you for listening to the List Building Lifestyle. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to never miss an episode. Because who knows, just one conversion tactic we share on the show might double your list and double your business. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. And don't forget to claim your complimentary copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. This is Igor Kheifets, and until next time we talk, have a good one.
This is the podcastfactory.com.